This is how the state of data. Yeah. So we are live. Hello, everyone. So we are back after it was in the end, I think, a really short summer break, at least like for me, but still 3 weeks. It was good. Today I have two people with us, so which definitely shows something has changed. And so what has changed was like that Mary and I sit down, we're thinking about, okay, the first one, we were quite happy with that, but we still saw, okay, we can do it a little bit better. And since we have the concept to say better together, so we really want to bring the people from data side and people from product and business side together to discuss, okay, why it's not the natural connection that just flows. So we thought, okay, we now do a new format where we basically have two guests. So usually I would say one is really like team data, and the other one is team product or team business. The funny thing today is like both can easily switch between both roles because like both at least worked in both areas, worked a lot in there. I did this on purpose because like it makes it a lot easier for me to do this. And maybe we do more challenging stuff in the future where we really bring together product and people and data people. So, but enough about this kind of introduction. So, because we want to really get some stuff covered. So, Juliana, do you like to give us a quick intro? So, who you are, where you are, what you're doing when you don't
It all
appear? When you
started in
don't
a
appear
summer
in
day.
the evening. Yes, it all started in the summer day when you don't appear in the evening here. So, what's like your regular stuff?
Yeah, so like how deep do you want me to go? So yeah, it all started in a summer day in 1990 when I was born around 4 a.m. in the morning.
Okay,
No,
that is really extensive.
I'm Juliana Jackson. I work at MediaMonks as a senior data and optimization strategist, which basically is me doing a lot of data collection, data activation, experimentation. I do everything. I've been doing it for 13 years. I've been doing everything for 13 years, and just excited to chat with you guys. I think it's the first time we see each other and talk to each other versus
That's
LinkedIn.
true. Yeah.
And at least I know you for 2 years, probably, Timo.
Yeah.
Glenn, I've been knowing you for a while, and I'm offended you didn't say hi in Belgium, but yeah, really excited.
Sorry for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good summary, and you basically, I mean, I think the interesting thing about you, I think when I met you, you still were this the CLV lady.
Yeah.
I think this was your tagline
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. This moved on to other different kind of directions. So you did product work, and then you basically really ventured out to say, hey, I just want to do data stuff. So which makes you a really good person for today.
Thank you.
Glenn, what about you?
So I'm Glenn. I'm one of the co-founders of Human 37. I started, let's say, 10 years ago in digital, where everything was about performance media or performance advertising. So a lot of Google ads. It's the early days. And I got more intrigued by doing analytics. So that's what I started doing only or almost exclusively. And today I'm mostly in customer data. So it's analytics, it's data warehousing, it's everything that comes in between. With the objective to just build cool stuff for the end customer using data as a backbone.
So you are one of the rare people who actually earn money with the data setups.
Yeah, that's at least the business model, right? So far, so good.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, that's good. So maybe start with something, because like you said it where you started out. So can you still remember when was the first time that you actually did something with data? I know it's a tricky question because like it can be anything. I mean, it can be a huge Excel analysis and so on. So for example, this was the stuff for me where my first touch point with data was like to getting prints out from SAP, manually put them into an Excel sheet, making a lot of mistakes because I make mistakes when I do things manually, and then basically automate the whole thing in the end. So really figured out, okay, how I can get the text files delivered, how I can upload them, and I mean, in Excel, but not data warehouse. So this was my first data stuff. But can you still remember when basically you had your first data use case?
Is it for me or for Glenn?
No, it's for both of you. So whatever feel.
I mean, I started working in sales. That was my first job. I still do sales to a degree because I can't help myself. Once sales, always sales. But when I was pregnant with my first kid, this was like very early because I had my oldest when I was 20. So I was doing a lot of data mining, which
Yeah.
basically means creating lists of leads, and with a lot of stalking skills that I had from high school, from stalking my boyfriends. And I was selling this on freelancer.com back then, which was VWorker, and then ended up, I don't even know how it's called right now. So that was like my first interaction with data, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that lead generation was a thing. So I was trying to make money out of it while being at home and pregnant. So that was kind of like what I always had, like this puzzle type of mindset. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of us in the space, they like to solve problems and reverse engineer things. So for me, it was super exciting that you can do all this type of research and then create that into a data set that people can use to call and whatever we were doing back in 2010. So I'm old.
Oh, I'm older, but we wouldn't mention it here. So
It's okay. They don't know.
no, I think not so many people know. So I keep it a secret for at least for some time.
It's those German genes, man. Like you couldn't tell.
Maybe, but I have to say my German friends, yeah, some yes, some no. So I don't know if you can put it back to that. So I was just lucky. So so my problem was more like when I was 20, I looked like 40. So now it pays off. So it's good. Glenn, can you remember when was the first time that you basically did something with data?
I think it was a university. I studied applied economical sciences. And
Okay.
it's kind of almost embarrassing to say because I work in data now, but I had to take the statistics course 3 times to finally
You're not the
pass.
only one.
Yeah, but the interesting part is that I absolutely hated it, as well as math back in the day. But it was because it's so theoretical, and it's one of the things I'm convinced of, that our system is so theoretical. And I'm like, today I'm excited by all that stuff, and I'm like, why didn't they teach me statistics in that context while I was at school? No, I got these like really random laboratorium data sets, and I had to figure out if things made sense or not, but I wasn't going to do anything in that direction with it. So I guess my first interactions with data actually weren't that so successful nor passionate either. So yeah.
So it developed over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. What would you say? So maybe Glenn, you can continue, and Juliana, ask you the same question. Like when you say, what is really like? And it can be like on a personal level. What is the fun, and I would say the benefit of using or of working in data? So what really brings you back? So I always have stuff to go back. Even I can have the worst kind of things. I always come back. So what would you say? What keeps you coming back, even after statistics and so on?
I think there's a bunch of things. The way we usually work is we start with like there's a question or a hypothesis somebody has, and they have no way of answering it, and then like building the entire journey of data collection, making sure the data works, etc., and then being able to give them the answer, and with that answer then build a next iteration of their product, their experience, their campaign, personalization, whatever, and actually see how it improves the business or makes it easier for the customers to do whatever they need to do. Like that's kind of the thing that I enjoy the most, as well as I'm kind of obsessed for some reason. Not a lot of people are, but with documentation and like the whole piece of like cleaning things up and having a nice package to drop off with a client and say like, I'm very happy with this piece of work that we've done, and it answers your question, and here is a nice bow tie around it, and it's documentation. And so those are the things that I kind of enjoy, the entire process of going from start to finish, and not just doing like only tracking or only digging for insights or only doing one piece, but actually tying it back to what are we trying to solve. I think that's the most exciting part. And then to see it in the wild actually build results.
Juliana, what's your
I love your answer. Yeah, I love his answer. It's really cool because we're builders, right? Even if it's in data, we're building system, we're building better solutions. For me, I think it's like two types of answers I have, because no matter what I do, I'm a marketer. I'm a person that worked in different aspects of the business, in operations, in product, in retention. So I'm always going to look at data through a business lens. So being able to be that person that can communicate with technical implementation and cloud engineers and whatever, and also communicate to the customer, being that glue between these two worlds, like really gives me a lot of satisfaction, because I want to make sure that the work that the team does is appreciated and understood by the client, but also having the client having that aha moment, like, oh shit, this is actually cool. Like, I understand this. This, like facilitates a lot of collaboration. And actually, I always say this, like, the value of data is not just button clicks with roboto mano in a document. It's just being able to actually show what the value of that data is. Like, what's the revenue? How does it tie to revenue? How does it tie to business growth? And the second part of what I always and I always wanted to be a part of this is because of the community. I think the community in data is one of the nicest places to be, and people are supportive. It's healthy. It's non-toxic. It's a bit competitive because it is what it is. We're humans. But it's super inviting and kind, and I've received tons of kindness ever since I moved from this role to a total, like, from a bit, and you know my story better, from a total business role of evangelizing and doing product to data where I have to learn everything from zero. I was received with so much support from everyone. So like that's like I feel like I belong, and I don't feel like it's worse than marketing.
Yeah, I know. I think in a lot of places, this still surprised me as well. So like the data community in different aspects. So let's say the analytics community, which is quite strong, and I would say in Europe, but also like, let's say, the data engineering community, maybe more driven out of the US and the UK. But you always come across people, as you said, so with very open mindset.
Yeah.
With no one is asking if they can help. So I had the same stuff. So people jumping on a 2-hour call with me to figure something out, and they didn't have to do it. So do you both have an idea why this stuff in data is so different? And I would even say compared to software engineering, which also sometimes have really nice one, but not in that way. So is it like because we are all lost and just need to stick together, or?
I don't. It's probably because we just try to catch up on a million things, and it's really, the pace is super high. I also think it's because, like Juliana said, it's like we're all builders, and the interesting part is like there's very little debate on, or there's less debate, let's say, in this community or analytics community than somewhere else, and like my setup is better than yours. It happens. But everybody is interested in like, okay, we all use the same Lego bricks, and we want to build a bridge. What does your bridge look like? And we compare like setups that way. And it's very interesting because you have people who have more technical skills that will tackle the same problem in a completely different way, which gets you the same result. And it just broadens your scope of skills and understanding that you're having, because that's kind of what you're trying to build. You're not trying to figure out what's the one playbook or one scenario in which you solve this track or issue. You try to understand what the issue is, what the components are, so you can reuse them. And I think that's what's driving. It's an assumption, obviously, but in my case, what intrigues me in the community, people are solving the same problem in different ways, and they're excited about sharing that they found a new way to do it.
Yeah, it's like all of us are connected by one thing: we're fucking curious. So that curiosity is what makes us all like thrive and develop more and work together. And also, like in Europe, I think we are very lucky that we have all these events where we can meet each other and chat and present and shoot shit. So I think that's like the coolest part of being here. You can learn so much. Like I learned in a year since I'm here at MediaMonks, so much shit, like so much. I cannot even. I'm like, whoa, like I feel like a total different person. It's just because even if you go and measure Slack and if you search a problem, it's very likely like 20 other people had the same problem as you. And they're like, damn, like this is how you solve it. Okay, and then you go and figure it out on your own or try to use the same solution. So it's cool. Like that's the coolest part. And for everyone who's watching, thank you for being in our community.
Exactly. And for everyone who's watching and is not in Europe, so please check out. So for example, if you're really like more interested in the, let's say, the measuring part, so we have the measure camps across Europe. So you basically can pick the cities that you like to visit and just connect, or let's say combine it with a measure camp. So measure camp on Saturday, and then let's say 2 days. I don't know. So crazy stuff. So they did it in Munich. They did it in the big arena of Bayern Munich. So which
I was jealous. Yeah, I was jealous. Massive FOMO, man. I was like, damn, stop fucking posting pictures.
The problem is like if you come from Germany, no one or most of the people don't really like this club. So it's this part was like I don't really care, but still, I mean, it's an impressive building. So it's but as you said, so like it's more like the people that come there and share stuff and moving things forward. So this is really nice. One thing that is interesting. So at the moment, you both work in an agency, but I would say so. You always have this. At least like it's often like that. Let's say you have the three models. On the one hand, you can work in an agency, then you can work in a startup, or you can work in an enterprise. Yeah. So why at the moment agency? So I mean, of course, to some degree, it's always on purpose. So what would you say? So why, for example, is agency a good place to do data as well? And so like, or do you need to switch between both at some point?
That's a great question. I mean, for me, it's my first job in an agency. I always was client side. Always. Like, this is the first time ever working in an agency. So I guess what I can tell you after being here for a year is that some people will thrive on chaos, some will fall and get hurt on chaos because it's a lot of chaos in an agency.
A lot of chaos.
Yes, and it's a lot of deliverables, and like the worst thing that you deal with is context switching, because you can talk to a bank and then with the hospital and then with the retailer. And all of them have total business model, different tools. One is Adobe, one is GA, one is GCP. Then you have Looker Studio, then you have Tableau, then you have another tool. So it's very hard, and it's a hard skill to develop and build over time to stay fucking sane. That's like the skill, to stay sane. But I think if you're new to the game and you're just starting out as an analyst, I advise going into an agency, because you're gonna be exposed to a lot of things that can build you to get to client side. Like, most people go to an agency and then they go to client side. In my case, was totally different. But I think, of course, you can thrive in an agency as long as you're okay with being an agent of chaos, in my opinion.
It's a nice way of describing it, actually. I've always been on the agency side.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I've always been. I started actually at Deloitte. Wasn't something for me. Then I moved into another agency, and now I'm having with my co-founders our own agency. I like what you said on like starting on the agency side. It's actually one of the things that people who start actually their professional career and want to go into what we're doing. Like, an agency is a cool place. Why? Because you need to manage so many things and you learn so many skills. Also, you understand, or you get a look into so many businesses. And if you have a first job, if you have a first job and you go client side, you have one culture to understand what business culture is. When you're in an agency, you kind of can taste a bit from everything that you're seeing, which I kind of like. And you also see that, well, some big brands might look amazing from the outside, but internally, like, maybe it's not your thing. And on the other hand, I think like at some point it also becomes a lifestyle. That you need to, either you like it or you don't. And I'm also convinced that it can only last for so long, because it's being an agent of chaos and you need to try to stay sane. But so far it's like the lifestyle that for me personally that I like, but it's one of the flags I would definitely put on the agency life. It's a lifestyle that you need to be able to handle.
Yeah, that's true. I always come to the point. So basically right now where I would say, okay, after 7 or 8 years, I definitely need a break from this kind of lifestyle. So because like
it gets to a point for sure. But as I agree with Glenn, like, if it's the best thing you can do for yourself, if you start as a marketer or as an analyst, is to go into an agency. Because I've seen people that have been client side that I know, that I used to work in different companies, that stayed in the same company for 10 years, analysts. And when you're in the same company, even if you do like some sort of managed services for different clients, you're still not going to be ever exposed to all the business cases and scenarios and technologies and tools. And like, you cannot basically keep up. And this is why I said we're a bit competitive, because we have to keep up with a lot of things. Like, things are moving so fast. And obviously you don't have to be everything to everyone, but at least you need to be able to join the conversation and understand, like, I don't know, like with privacy, for instance, I'm not a privacy expert, but I, read what you share, Glenn, or I look at Siobhan, or I look at other people that share. So I, at least, like, if I'm in a conversation, I don't look stupid as fuck. So yeah, that's one thing. So, but if you're just client side and you're just seeing the same, nothing wrong with client side though. It's dope. Like, if it works for you, it's dope. But it needs to be like at some point just to change out, just to see what else is out there. Yeah.
In the agency work that you have right now, because I know that you work, let's say, in a very specific place. You're not the one who's like sitting in the basement and doing stuff, and maybe some days yes, but let's say most of the time you're basically really like out there to do things. So with what kind of teams do you work in the different kind of projects? So is this you work with data teams, or do you really work with let's say product or business teams?
You can go first, Glenn, if you want.
We kind of work with
you.
no worries. We work. It kind of depends. We work with marketing teams because they bring business cases or cases that are closest to business. We work with product teams because we also do like pure product analytics implementations, and we work with data teams because they need CDI and data warehouse solutions. So it's kind of a bit of everything. And if you then tie back to, you need to be able to keep up with everything. Obviously, you have profiles in every company that are a bit more focused on one thing versus the other. Yeah. I have clients who come to me with their issues with their Kafka streams. I get it, but it's kind of like, that's where I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a challenge, which I like. But then there are things where you do like more product analytics or marketing use cases where you're actually way more comfortable. And so I think it also makes sense to have that balance because you can't be on edge all the time. You just need to be able to figure out what's the proper solution for somebody and just get them there. That's our job. Our job is to figure out how to fix stuff. And in a lot of cases, it might sound like kind of a paradox. Our job is in a lot of cases not necessarily to know from the start, but to figure out how to get there. Yeah. And that's where all the business and the building blocks that we talked about actually come in. Like, what do I know in the back of my head? And what does my team know that helps us to bridge the gap that we're currently facing? Yeah. And that works in product marketing or engineering.
Similar,
okay, it's similar on your end as well.
Yeah, all my clients are enterprise, very large companies. And when it comes to very large companies, you have the product team or the marketing team, which is like your contact, but then you also work with their stakeholders, which is a very interesting situation. Yeah. So like
what makes it so what makes it so interesting, or maybe I guess it's also challenging?
Let me try to position it in the right way. So if you would work with a bank, for instance, because I work with a lot of banks, it's very challenging because first, privacy and compliance. So very low access to different tools, a lot of, it's a very hard decision-making process to adopt tools in the tech stack to get things done. So I think what I'm trying to do is also build with the stakeholders, because for instance, in a bank situation, what I've seen like from the banks that I work with is like there's different stakeholders for different parts of the website or for the app. So even if you work with the product manager, the product manager can come up with solutions that we both can come up with solutions, but it still needs to be signed off. Yeah. So like the secret that what I do is I focus a lot on education. And I try to do workshops and I try to do like trainings with the client where I explain, like this is why we experiment, this is what's usability, this is what's UX. And when you get everyone from different specters of the business, because it might be somebody that's in operations that handles the product or a certain page of the website. So you want to make sure that you get everyone to some sort of level of understanding, and then is when decision making should happen. So what I'm not struggling, but what is challenging and interesting for me is that I realized when I started the analyst job, I thought I'm just going to do technical implementation. Yeah. But what's funny is that I do a lot of slide decks, I do a lot of politics, and I do a lot of calls where I just simply like train. Like I've been doing so many trainings. And it's kind of cool to me because when you get, again, that aha moment from all the stakeholders and everyone is on the same page, then I know we're ready to work, and then things happen. And that's a really cool thing. But also it's just, again, like this decision-making progress. Like luckily I have clients that are really fun to work with and are excited, but then all of us need to calm down because the decision-making progress is hard. But I like something you said, Glenn, like at the end of the day, you sell the castle on the hill, but you don't know how that castle is going to look like in the end. It's like a constant discovery and learning process with the client. But when you know what the castle on the hill is, you can always show that castle on the hill, but you have to get there, So baby steps. And
Yeah.
this is something I learned from Tim Stewart, the Castle on the Hill thing, and it's something that works, but it's fun. It's fun. It's challenging.
A lot of
but
what you're
fun.
saying is super relatable, huh? I mean, like you go in, you talk to one team, and all of a sudden you have a DPO on your back and like 4 managers and a guy from another team who's actually the owner because you're whatever. But the interesting part is like what I enjoy a lot is like what we're trying to figure out is like this is all of the things that we can do. Now let's figure out what we should do. And that kind of works in a lot of aspects, right? Specifically in privacy, it works. Like technically we can do everything. What should we do? But it's also in technical solutions because every organization has their perimeter, their way of working, or no, we cannot do this because of X, Y, Z. And so it reduces all of the options. And the fact that like being curious and trying in your career in analytics, trying to figure out as much as possible makes the number of options we have to start with bigger. And our job is to give like a couple of scenarios that make sense. And along the way, those will like become clear which one is the obvious one to go for. But it's interesting for a lot of people, they hire you to like, what's the one solution I need? Because it's almost a patch, but I don't believe it's going to keep working that way, let's say.
And it's quite interesting because you come both to the same place, and this is like, and I saw the same stuff as well. So you have one counterpart, let's say from a specific kind of team, one kind of problem, and it easily gets broad. But I think the interesting thing is like I would say I was a little bit annoyed by that because like I'm, for example, someone who doesn't really like politics. But I think in the end, what I just been thinking about, like, I mean, I see this problem, let's say, take a step back from agency load. Let's say how these problems evolve internally. So let's say you have a data team, and on the other hand, let's say you have a growth team, you have a product team. And the data team often tries to, or is basically not considering what you just said. It's not really like considering this process or embrace this process that some stuff just needs a lot of people in there, and some stuff needs like, I don't know, 10 repetitions of training and so on until it really gets in, and then it really gets cool. Because like when I look into internal data teams, I mean, they are so up with different kind of stuff, let's say fixing some kind of data pipelines or other stuff, that this is really missed out. So how do you see this? How do you see like where, let's say, data teams can maybe with easy steps do this better internally?
It's a great point because there's always going to be silos within agencies and within companies. Like we have our own silos. The bigger you are, the more silos you're going to have. I can give you like a practical example with experimentation, for instance. The way I do experimentation, it's a bit different than the classic CRO, let's say, because the way I'm building it, involves a lot of data science models, and it's fun. It's a bit different. But what I noticed is that, I wrote about this some days ago on LinkedIn, is that I discovered with mostly all the clients that I have this type of engagement, that the research part is where you get the data team interested, the product team interested, and the marketing team interested, because everyone cares about that qualitative aspect of data. They have the access to the numbers, but they don't have that view on the qualitative attributes of data. So like understanding, I speak a lot about sentiment analysis. If you do sentiment analysis on, let's say I have a client that has 500,000 reviews in App Store and Google Store. So what we did is we ran sentiment analysis, we detected the sentiment, and then we created like a prioritization of the topics that we found in that research. Then the marketing teams is like, oh my God, I need to write better articles, or I need to do better paid search. I need to do better audience targeting. The product team is like, oh shit, the login doesn't work properly. Oh my God, the recommended stuff doesn't work, the loyalty program. And then all the teams discover that research actually brings them together. So what I'm trying right now, for especially, this works not in every product, right? In every type of engagement, in every type of client. But what I've noticed with experimentation, that this part research gets together. And from a data analyst perspective, that initial audit, that discovery audit of the, what they have, it's also bringing people together, because it happened to me a lot of times to get reached out on LinkedIn and say, hey, like, I want some Looker Studio dashboards. And I'm like, like, wait a second, like, I need to look also at some different things before you actually see the Looker Studio dashboard. And then it's when like people are asking themselves, like, what do you mean? And then we're looking at data collection, we're looking at measurement plan. How does that map with business? And this is how you can get people together about, involving them. But it doesn't work like that all the time, unfortunately. This is like edge cases. Most of the time, it's just a lot of politics.
Glenn, if you would take your experience and let's say you do the jump, so let's say you spend now a lot of time in agency, at some point a hot startup comes around, is somewhere beyond seed, will raise a lot of money in Series A, and they basically ask you, okay, are you up for the challenge? So what would be, so not really like technically, but let's say from a culture perspective, what would be the things that you would bring into it just based on this experience?
It's a very broad and a very hard question.
I know.
Usually the thing, whenever a client comes in, there's a couple of things that we do with clients. It's like pinpoint solutions. We need an implementation for X, or we need this, which is pretty straightforward, right? But then when the question is like, we need to do something with our data, it becomes so broad. And the thing we immediately do is we start with the business. Like we go through a series of working sessions, data strategy track, if you will. And it takes like a long time before we even start debating tooling or discussing tooling, because we don't want to talk about tools. Like, should we buy this? Like, how do I know what you should buy? Tell me what you want to achieve. And so usually we start with like what we call user stories that you know from development, right? But around like business cases, and you get this really big business case. And I get the thing like, I would like to get a customer 360-degree view, and I'm like, this is really a bad use case. Like, this is not a good use case. Tell me why you need it. And then we drill down, and we're a pain in the ass for our clients, and we end up with like sometimes 40, 50 user stories. And based on those 50, 40 user stories, we're like, okay, but time is also a limitation. Like, if you could choose, what would you do first? And then from there, we start figuring out what we're supposed to do and what we need to do. And it could be that the infrastructure of the client evolves over 2 years to be very big, but you're not going to build something very big, very fast. You're going to do it incrementally, because what you want to show is like, okay, let's put 2 or 3 use cases in production, and let's show the impact it has, so we can get more buy-in from the rest of the teams. Because usually the pinpoint solutions that you have, I'm just saying something very simple, like conversion tracking these days is mostly server side, right? We want to track better conversions. And if you can show that, because it's a marketing use case, which is usually fairly detached from the core infrastructures that organizations run on. But if you can show that, you have buy-in to actually go deeper, because you can talk to another team and you can show that value. And you start this journey of actually building an infrastructure that drives business or drives impact, because the first thing you did was focusing on the impact, and not like, I need a data warehouse and 50 data pipelines and 50 licenses of this tool and this tool and this tool, because in the end, you're not going to be able to get it up in the air anyways.
One follow-up questions on that. So I think this totally makes sense, but there's always like the risk when you take the use case approach, that you come up, let's say, really with 3 or 4 really good use cases, but in the end, at some point you have, let's say, 10 use cases in your setup, and sometimes they're not really aligned. Sometimes they use similar stuff and you implement it 2 times. So how do you basically establish a track that make sure that you basically come up with a, let's call it, scalable kind of setup?
Yeah. So you don't build yourself in a corner, right?
Exactly.
It's a tricky one. Typically, it starts with like, for all use cases, you need some sort of data collection, and you start thinking about, we're going to put these in production, but we also know in the back of our heads we're going into that direction. And then you just continue building iteratively, and you take into account the company's culture as well. Like, are you builders? Do you buy stuff, or do you build stuff? What do you prefer? Are you in this stack natively, or is it a hard thing for you to transfer to this stack? And I also kind of believe that the infrastructure is, one way or another, a living organism. There's no way of saying we're going to do this now for 6 months, die hard, or we're going to be fine for a decade. That's not how it works. So there's always this like 6-month, quarterly, iterative approach to figure out what are the use cases you want to tackle next, and how does this impact the infrastructure? Are we still on the right track for the next 12 months? And so you constantly ask yourself this question. Like, I'm convinced that building a customer data strategy and the infrastructure that goes with it evolves with the use cases you have, which evolve with the customer and the business you have. So it's going to be a living thing that always keeps evolving. So it's part of the
process. How do you avoid scope creep? Because that's
it's very hard. by being clear of what the initial scope is, I guess,
Mhm.
and then figuring out how far your boundaries for scope creep, I guess. And it also depends on, like, if you're an agency, you have different types of engagements, right? You have scoped
Yeah.
work, you have time and materials. If you have a pinpoint solution and it's like, we need to implement a product analytics solution, it's fairly clear to where we go. If
Yeah.
it's about, we're going to set up an entire environment for you and we're on this customer data track, we typically chop it up in specific chapters that we can go through. But it's a case by case example, but it's one of the things that are very challenging, right?
Yeah, that is. So maybe as let's say as a final one in this kind of block, Juliana, you had this nice picture of this castle on the hill, so which I think is really nice. But one problem, of course, is like that. Let's say business teams and product team envision a very shiny castle, a really big one. So how do you take this to explain to business that data is not that easy, so that it's really like it has a lot of challenges and so on? So how do you prepare them for that?
That's an excellent question. Like, I have two answers, like from an experimentation point of view, but also from a data analytics. The first part is very similar to what Glenn mentioned earlier. We also have like this measurement planning strategy. And what I do is I also am a pain in the ass sometimes to the client myself, because everyone comes in, I want to track this and I want to track this and I want to track this. And then I have like this model that I learned from Chris Mercer. Is called the KIA model: question, information, and answer. So, and I'm sorry for the police cars that are passing.
That's all right.
It's not for me. I'm being weird. But basically the TLDR is, I ask the client, okay, you want to track, I don't know, sales from email. Great. But what are you going to do when you have this information? Then is when the buck stops, because people want to track, because we need this for OKRs. Amazing. So what's the first thing that you will do when you find out this metric? Dead. So this takes some time. So I've had feedback from, we also work like with different government, associations and that they are in trouble. And I had some great feedback from one of these teams. They said that this is the first time we actually talked together, all of us, to build something. So like these things that Glenn is talking about and this measurement type of planning really helps. But it's difficult, right? It's very challenging, because you always have to have in mind the business. So when I was at Super Week this year, I actually did this talk about the business context. And I showed this image. I wish I could share it right now, but I cannot share my screen. But basically, is this elephant that has different pieces chopped out. So I was still, you know that one, right? I've been blowing LinkedIn with that up. So context is key, obviously, to cementing the value of data within the company. So I was showing analysts at Super Week, which was a tough thing to do. It was a bit scary and, to be there and say this. But I said, we're looking at the ass of the elephant all day. We're tied into tags and into implementation and tools. But then you have other pieces of the elephant, which is the ops team, the finance team, the product team, the support team. So what we need to understand as analysts and as marketers in general, because it's not just analysts making this mistake, you're going to be narrowed viewed no matter what, is having this full context. And we have to make sure that all the strategies and tactics and advice that we bring into a business has to go to the filter of the business context, because what side of the context is not true. So that's it can go into this philosophical conversation of what truth means, because truth is very subjective to the person that that says it. So if you think about business, the truth of a business is very subjective to the unit economics, to the business model, to the market, to the products, and so on. So my advice for analysts has been, for a long time, I've been saying this on repeat: hug a marketer, hug a salesperson, and immerse yourself into what other people are doing, because it's so much context that you're getting to do better your work. So as what Glenn said, invest time in the beginning of the relationship to understand the business very well, understand how is that business structured to make money. That's the most important part. How is the business making money? Everything ends with the money. Then understand what are their external and internal processes. And I have this cool slide I can share afterwards if you're going to post this, about how Spotify has this done. Like, you have internal processes and external processes. You have to understand how shit works inside, but also on outside, like how is the marketing, how is the support, how is everything, and then understand the resource allocation of the company. This is highly slept on, because once you understand how the company allocates resources for agencies, for marketing, because you would be very surprised to see that companies don't want to invest in research or analytics, but they're very easy to drop the million every quarter on Facebook ads. And you have to ask yourself, like, what is this mentality? And this goes back to what Glenn was saying earlier, and then I'm done, I'll shut up, to the impact. So my advice is to think about a client engagement as you would think about when you are starting to use a software for the first time, and the only way you can hook a user into a software is to give them a quick win as soon as they get a validation and a quick win. So when you start a relationship with the client as an agency, you have to be able to understand first, but then provide that fast impact so you can get buy-in for long term. So you have to prove yourself very fast. But the only way you can prove yourself is if you spend enough time in the beginning of the engagement to learn what's going on in that business. And then I'm done. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. I was already thinking how I summarize this kind of, let's say, the talk that we had.
I get excited about this.
No, it's good. We need more people to getting excited. I think also really internally. So let's close down with super quick questions, which have some relation to data, but not all of them. But we have to start with one which is very, let's say, Europe or EU focused. So if you have to make a bet, how long does the new Privacy Shield 3.0 hold on? Let's assume we basically
I don't know much about that. So I'm going to let Glenn take that one.
Less than 6 months.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that's quick.
They're motivated on the other side. They're motivated. Huh?
True. Yeah, that's true. And they have experience. So I think they know pretty exactly how to dissect the thing. So for them, it's a no-brainer.
But for everyone listening, let's define this.
But you want to be wrong, yeah.
Let's talk about what this is for everyone listening.
Yeah.
So go.
Yeah, we should. Do you want to define it? I can also define it.
Define it, Timo.
Let's define it because I see people are listening on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right. So there were different kind of agreements between the EU and the US, which is about sharing data between both entities. So I think Safe Harbor was the first one. Then they always had different names for that. So this
Privacy
is why I know.
Shield, I believe.
Exactly. Then we had Privacy Shield. And then we had some weird stuff in between. So let's say standard contract clauses where they were all hoping. And so, and basically, I think in a nutshell, the big problem is like the US at the moment cannot guarantee that data from EU citizens is protected to get access from, let's say, governmental entities and so on. So it's not like, I mean, I would not say that's a paradise here, but I would say we have more measures in place. And this is the big problem, so that we don't have the measures. This spans up the whole problem then with GA, because GA says, hey, we send our data all exclusively and store it in the US. So now we have some measures in there to clean it up before we send it over. But still, like, let's say the courts or the data protection agencies so far have made the decision to say, it's not so cool. It's interesting that it always comes back to Google Analytics, and I'm always wondering why we don't see Salesforce or HubSpot there, because like this is much more severe data. But
especially HubSpot is just always in the spotlight for some reason, but they're definitely not the only ones.
And these other guys are flying under the radar. But HubSpot, come on, Microsoft Clarity. People use Microsoft Clarity.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Josh, if you're watching this, but no, man. No, I told you yesterday. No. When I installed Microsoft Clarity, I felt dirty. In the first 10 seconds, I uninstalled it. I deleted the tag. I was like, no, this is not for me. Like, that's, come on.
Maybe for everyone who doesn't really know what Clarity does, they do a lot of auto tracking. So it's not really like that you sit there and say, hey, I explicitly want to have this 5 or
they track
6
everything,
event.
bro.
They track everything. Exactly.
Everything. Like,
I think they're at least good enough to not do really like a full keylogger, which some of these tools did in the past as well. So we had nice stories where like, hey, we captured everything that you put into a form and send it over. So it's crazy. Okay, so moving to the next one. BART or ChatGPT? What would you pick?
Haven't used BART at all, so I'm ChatGPT. I pay for ChatGPT.
You can now. So BART is now since a week, I think, available. So
yeah, I have not touched it, but I do pay for GPT Plus. I love the code interpreter. I'm playing a lot. my Kaggle data, and it's fun. It's really fun. I think it's a great tool. I think AI on the long term can be used successfully in experimentation and qualitative data. I'm very big on qualitative data. Being able to do this type of sentiment analysis and using an AI engine to extract topics or, like do predictive type of things from this analysis can help product teams make better products and help marketing teams, inform what are they doing. So it's a great research tool, in my opinion. It's a research tool, right?
Yeah.
I have my limits with the generative AI stuff, but I don't want to speak about it right now because I can't. But it's cool. Like, I like it. I'm positively excited, but you cannot spell AI without data. So it's an interesting time for us, I guess.
Yeah, true. Glenn, what's your take?
GPT. I haven't played with Bard too much.
Yeah.
Recently building some things with the GPT API, and I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. It's scary, it's crazy. So I like the idea that you're saying that it's for experimentation, and for inspiration, rather than for connecting it with stuff it should not be connected with.
100% that, yeah.
That's true. So I right now just put every prompt into Bard and ChatGPT, and I would still say ChatGPT usually brings better results. But okay, Bard has they have some time to catch up. So let's see where it gets to.
I had a running joke in some GA4 trainings I did that it would be funny to connect Bard with GA4 because they have those machine learning insights. That's all I'm gonna say because I can't talk more about this, but that's what I have to say.
Maybe this is the long GA4 plan, but it just didn't roll out on time. So they're like, okay, we don't need the interface. Sorry.
Maybe the plugin on GA4 has been Bard all along. Who knows?
Yeah,
that would explain a lot in terms of quality. No, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, the strategy and product development as well. So
they're doing better, though. They're doing better. I don't want us to be like,
no, that's right.
When we try, I don't like it. Like, I really dislike, and I'm actually happy that I'm on LinkedIn Live to say how much I despise those videos that are,
I made one of these. I made this GA, but I have to say, so I put it in a lot of context. So
no, I'm talking about those parody videos.
Okay.
About GA4. Just do better. Like I mean, of course it's good to be critical and do constructive pushback because we're a community, but like I just feel like, as Seymour wrote in that article, Dear GA4, I think a lot of people are using it as a tool of pushing people against things that they don't even need to do. And it's like kind of like there's a part of the community that is not necessarily the community, but there's people that are immersing in the community with the approach that I really don't like, when we are just like, oh, you have to do this. You need to do this. No, you don't have to do anything. You just have to do whatever is best for your business.
That's
and I'm probably going to get some unfollows for this, but it's fine. I'm used to it.
Yeah, it's okay. So you always, you always have to clean up your subscriber and follower list from time to time. So,
it's fine.
Final question. What are the best cities to visit in Europe? Or what are your favorite ones?
Copenhagen.
Really?
I love Copenhagen. I've been there 3 times this year.
Yeah. No, it's a nice one.
Love Copenhagen.
Glenn, what's yours? What do you recommend?
I prefer something sunny. I would say Barcelona. But if you're Brussels is not too bad. So if you're in town, ping me and first beer's on me. So
and by the way, Belgian beer is really fantastic. So people who haven't tasted it shouldn't. So I basically always went to Belgium just for the beer.
The food is great.
Beer and the fries. So in the end,
yes,
fries.
Yeah.
When I was at Measure Camp, I ate so much Gruyere with wine. When we were at that restaurant there.
That's not even Belgian, huh? That's not even.
I don't know. It was
France.
I don't know. It probably came. I don't know. I think it came from a Belgian cow. Because remember we went at that restaurant in Measure Camp and they had those plates with cheese and capers. Bro, I ate like 6 of those. I was like, I like it how they eat here in Belgium. I ate like
that's a good bar. It's a good bar as well where we went.
It was nice. Brussels is nice and good people. I love people there. It's super. Not too many.
You're all welcome.
Not too many
everyone
people
go,
but go.
Yeah,
go to
exactly.
Glenn. He's buying drinks.
Bring me for a beer.
I'll remember that.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. So
It was.
I could easily now do it for another 2 hours, but we shouldn't keep people too busy and respect our timelines as well. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
That was a pleasure. Thank you. And bye, everyone. So I'm already back next week because I have to catch up a little bit. So usually I do a 2 weeks break. Next week I'm with Ahmed from Narrator and Roy from Absolver. So we do a little bit more, let's say, data engineering focus,
Nice.
but also like a lot about business and product and data and how it plays together. So, all right. Thank you.